2017 Tuesday Connections. Today we have Stephen Collins, and you might remember him from when he came and was Walt Whitman. And so today we're going to celebrate the 400th birthday of William Shakespeare. And so Stephen will do sort of, what would we call it?
Just a mixture of monologues, sonnets.
So thank you.
Okay.
So welcome, Stephen.
Thank you, thank you. If you cannot understand my argument and declare it's Greek to me, you are quoting Shakespeare. If you claim to be more sinned against than sinning, you are quoting Shakespeare. If you recall your salad days, you are quoting Shakespeare. If you act more in sorrow than in anger, if your wish is father to the thought, if your lost property has vanished into thin air, you are quoting Shakespeare. If you have ever refused to budge an inch or suffered from green-eyed jealousy, if you played fast and loose, if you've been tongue-tied, a tower of strength, hoodwinked, or in a pickle, if you've ever knitted your brows, made a virtue of necessity, insisted on fair play, slept not one wink, stood on ceremony, danced attendance on your lord and master, had short shrift, cold comfort, or too much of a good thing, if you've seen better days or lived in a fool's paradise, why then be that as it may, the more fool you, for it is a foregone conclusion that you are, as good luck would have it, quoting Shakespeare. If you think it is early days and clear out bag and baggage, if you think it is high time and that is the long and short of it, if you think the game is up and the truth will out, even if it involves your own flesh and blood, if you lie low till the crack of doom because you suspect foul play, if you have your teeth set on edge at one fell swoop without rhyme or reason, well then to give the devil his due if the truth were known, for surely you have a tongue in your head, you are quoting Shakespeare. Even if you bid me good riddance, if you send me packing, if you wish I were dead as a doornail, if you think I'm an eyesore, a laughingstock, the devil incarnate, a stony-hearted villain, bloody-minded, or a blinking idiot, well then by Jove, oh Lord, tut-tut, what the dickens, for goodness sake, but me no buts, for it is all one to me, you are quoting Shakespeare. I'm going to see if this woman will. Come in, or?
That's amazing.
Oh, okay. Okay.
But I have a question
Yes.
right now. Who says that people already didn't use those phrases before Shakespeare made them so well known?
Well, they weren't generally in currency in the English language before Shakespeare, and Shakespeare invented some of those words. Okay, so I think it's important to say a few words about the whole authorship controversy, all right? There's an authorship controversy. There are people that believe Francis Bacon wrote the plays, or Christopher Marlowe wrote the plays. There's a movement that's been gaining in numbers every year. They call themselves the Oxfordians. The Oxfordians believe that the 17th Earl of Oxford, Edward de Vere, that he wrote the plays. Now, I don't think you can definitively prove that Shakespeare wrote or did not write the plays. But I come down on the fact that the man that was born in Stratford-upon-Avon, whose mother's name was Mary Arden and whose father's name was John Shakespeare, that's who I believe wrote the plays. I love what Bill Moyers once said when they asked him about the authorship controversy. Bill Moyers said, I'm tired of it. He said, frankly, I don't care if Mickey Mouse wrote the plays. He said, I'm just glad that we have them. So, with that said, in Shakespeare's time, there were no directors. The notion of a man or a woman directing the play, that doesn't happen for 100 years after Shakespeare's death. In Shakespeare's time, the members of the companies, the acting companies, and there were 4 theaters in London. They were called the Fortune, the Swan, the Rose, and Shakespeare's theater was called the Globe Theater. the members of those companies would talk amongst themselves about how they were going to approach a scene. All right, and now in Hamlet, if you remember Hamlet, Act 1, Scene 2, Hamlet is visited by what he believes is the ghost of his father. The ghost tells Hamlet in rather grisly detail about his murder at the hands of his brother, Claudius, Hamlet's uncle Claudius. So Hamlet wants to take his revenge, but he wants to make absolutely certain that Claudius is guilty. So he sets in motion what has come to be known as the mousetrap, or the play within the play wherein he will catch the conscience of the king. So a group of traveling players is coming to Elsinore to perform a play called The Murder of Gonzago. And Hamlet meets them outside the castle walls, and he gives them 18 lines to add to the play, which will depict the way his father was killed, with poison being poured in the porch of his ear. So Hamlet is invested that these actors do not just a good job, not just a creditable job, but they do a fantastic job. So Hamlet advises them how to act in a famous speech from Hamlet called Hamlet's Advice to the Players. Speak the speech, I pray you, as I pronounced it to you, trippingly on the tongue. But if you mouth it, as some of your players do, I had as lief the town cry as spoke my lines. Nor do not saw the air too much with your hands thus, but use all gently. For in the very torrent tempest, and as I may say, whirlwind of your passion, you must acquire and beget a temperance that may give it smoothness. Oh, it offends me to the soul to hear a robustious, periwig, pated fellow tear a passion to tatters, to very rags, to split the ears of the groundlings who for the most part are capable of nothing but inexplicable dumb shows and noise. I would have such a fellow whipped for doing termagant, it out Herod's Herod, pray you avoid it. Be not too tame neither, but let your own discretion be your tutor. Suit the action to the word to the action with this special observance, that you o'erstep not the modesty of nature, for anything so or done is from the purpose of playing, whose end, both at the first and now, was and is, to hold as twere the mirror up to nature, to show virtue her own feature, scorn her own image, and the very age and body of the time his form and pressure. Now this or done, or come tardy off, though it make the unskillful laugh, cannot but make the judicious grieve, the censure of the which one must in your allowance overweigh a whole theatre of others. Oh, I have seen players play, and heard others praise, not to speak it profanely, that having neither the accent of Christian nor the gait of Christian pagan or man, have so strutted and bellowed, I had thought some of nature's journeymen had made men, and not made them well. They imitated humanity so abominably. Go, make ready. Did you want to sit down?
I'm checking the door. Thank you.
Oh, okay. All right, so if William Shakespeare or Mickey Mouse, whoever wrote the plays, if they'd never written a single play, they would still be famous in the annals of English literature for the composition of 154 sonnets. Taken as a whole, the sonnets represent a profound meditation on time and aging and flux. Here are three of my favorite sonnets, beginning with one I'm sure many of you will recall. Sonnet 18. Shall I compare thee to a summer's day? Thou art more lovely and more temperate. Rough winds do shake the darling buds of May, and summer's lease hath all too short a date. Sometimes too hot the eye of heaven shines, and often is his gold complexion dimmed, And every fair from fair sometime declines by chance or nature's changing course untrimmed. But thy eternal summer shall not fade, nor lose possession of that fair thou owest, nor shall death brag thou wanderest in his shade, when in eternal lines to time thou growest. So long as men can breathe, or eyes can see, so long lives this, and this gives life to thee. Sonnet 60. Like as the waves make toward the pebbled shore, so do our minutes hasten to their end, each changing place with that which goes before. In sequent toil all forwards do contend. Nativity, once in the main of light, crawls to maturity, where with being crowned, crooked eclipses gainst his glory fight, and time that gave doth now his gift confound. Time doth transfix the flourish set on youth, delves the parallels in beauty's brow, feeds on the rarities of nature's truth, and nothing stands but for his scythe to mow. And yet 2 times in hope my verse shall stand, praising thy worth despite his cruel hand. How many people saw the movie Shakespeare in Love 15 years ago? All right, fabulous movie. And in Shakespeare's time, everybody was trying to write sonnets. It was the poetic form of the day, and everybody was trying to write them. Now, in the movie, if you recall, the gondolier says, Master Shakespeare, I have written some sonnets. I'd like you to read them for me and tell me if you think they are worthy. And Joseph Fiennes, the actor, the brother of Ralph Fiennes, 2 fabulous actors, he rolls his eyes as if to say, oh my God, I'm going to have to read these god-awful bad sonnets. Now, the Shakespearean or the Elizabethan or English sonnet is a variation of the Italian sonnets of Petrarch from 2 centuries earlier. Now, I've not made a study of Petrarch's sonnets, but I've looked at some of them. And the language tends to be overblown, really overblown rhetorical language. I think Shakespeare, in some of his sonnets, is poking fun at that overblown language. I also think he's poking fun of the notion that language can ever adequately describe our romantic feelings, if you will. This is one of my favorite sonnets. This is probably my second favorite. This is Sonnet 130. My mistress' eyes are nothing like the sun. Coral is far more red than her lips red. If snow be white, why then her breasts are dun. If hairs be wires, black wires grow on her head. I've seen roses damasked red and white, but no such roses see I in her cheeks. And in some perfumes is there more delight than in the breath that from my mistress reeks. I love to hear her speak. Yet well I know, music hath a far more pleasing sound. I grant, I never saw a goddess go. My mistress, when she walks, treads on the ground. And yet, by heaven, I think my love is rare, as any she belie with false compare. So what's Shakespeare saying there brilliantly? Beauty is in the eye of the beholder. Absolutely. All right, Richard II, King Richard II had been in Northern Ireland squelching a rebellion. He thought it was only going to take 2 to 3 weeks. It's dragged on for 8, 9 months. In his absence, his cousin, Henry Bolingbroke, who will become King Henry IV, and who earlier Richard sent into exile for insubordination, Bolingbroke has come back to England with the express purpose of usurping the throne from Richard. Now Richard and his army His army was once very large and powerful. Now it could be described as a ragtag remnant of what was once this mighty army. They have just narrowly defeated some forces loyal to Henry Bolingbroke. Richard, the king, has been expecting reinforcements, but a courier arrives to tell him that not only are the reinforcements not coming to him, they have defected over to the side of Henry Bolingbroke. So Richard, as you can imagine, is very despondent, and he addresses his army in what could be called an abdication speech. Of comfort no man speak. Let's talk of graves, of worms and epitaphs. Make dust our paper, and with rainy eyes write sorrow on the bosom of the earth. Let's choose executives and talk of wills, and yet not so. For what can we bequeath, save our deposed bodies to the ground? Our lands, our lives, and all our Bolingbroke's, and nothing can we call our own but death, and that small model of the barren earth which serves as paste and cover to our bones. For God's sake, let us sit upon the ground and tell sad stories of the death of kings, how some have been deposed, some slain in war, some haunted by the ghosts they have deposed, some poisoned by their wives, some sleeping, killed, all murdered. For within the hollow crown that rounds the mortal temples of a king keeps death his court. And there the antic sits, scoffing his state, grinning at his pomp, allowing him a breath, a little scene to monarchize, be feared and killed with looks, infusing him with self and vain conceit, as if this flesh, which walls about our life, were brass impregnable. And Eumed thus comes at the last, and with a little pin, bores through his castle wall. And farewell, king, cover your heads, and mock not flesh and blood with solemn reverence. Throw away respect, tradition, form, and ceremonious duty, for you have but mistook me all this while. I live with bread like you. Feel, want, taste, grief, need friends, subjected thus. How can you say to me, I am a king? And I am a king is followed by a question mark, not a period. He's not making a declarative sentence at the end. He's questioning. He's saying, how can I be a king? Kings have armies. Kings have power. I've been stripped of all of that. It's this wonderful humanizing speech where he says, listen, I have to eat just like you. I need friends just like you. All right, let's move on to one of Shakespeare's comedies. Much Ado About Nothing. Benedick, a young gentleman of the court, has long decried the debilitating effect that amorous relationships have on otherwise perfectly healthy young men. And such a perfectly healthy young man, he thinks, is his best friend Claudio. Claudio has fallen hopelessly and helplessly in love with Hero. And because of this, Claudio has not spent much time with his best buddy Benedick of late. Also, Benedick is also in denial about his own romantic feelings for the Lady Beatrice. And I think in order to deflect attention away from himself, Benedick rails on and on about Claudio. I do much wonder that one man, seeing how much another man is a fool, when he dedicates his behavior to love, will, after he hath laughed at such shallow folly in others, become the object of his own scorn by falling in love. And such a man is Claudio. I have known when there was no music with him but the drum and the fife. And now had he rather hear the tabor and the pipes. I've known when he would have walked 10 miles afoot to see a good armor, and now will he lie 10 nights awake carving the fashion of a new doublet. He was wont to speak plain and to the purpose like an honest soldier, but now are his words turned orthography, a very fantastical banquet. May I be so affected? I cannot tell, I think not. I will not be sworn, but love may transform me to an oyster, but till he has made an oyster of me, he shall never make me such a fool. One woman is fair, yet I am well. Another is wise, yet I am well. Another is virtuous, yet I am well. But till all virtues be in one woman shall not come in my grace. Rich she shall be, that's certain. Fair, or I'll never look on her. Virtuous, or I'll never cheapen her. Noble, or not I for an angel. Of excellent disposition, a good musician. And her hair shall be of the color that shall please God. Ah, here comes Monsieur Love. I'll hide me here in the arbor to see if I can listen. Isn't that brilliant, Shakespeare? To see if I can listen. All right, let's move on to Julius Caesar. At the beginning of the play, Julius Caesar, Caius Cassius is desperate to enlist Marcus Brutus into the conspiracy to kill Caesar. Why? Because Brutus's calling card has always been that he's an upright, fine, standing citizen of Rome. And also that he is what kind of a man? An honorable man. So Cassius wants to enlist Brutus because he knows if he gets Brutus involved, it lends the conspiracy legitimacy and credibility. Brutus wants no part of it, but Cassius wears down his resistance, convincing Brutus that Caesar wants to become a dictator and an emperor, and that they will lose their voice in the government. So Brutus takes part on the Ides of March, the assassination of Caesar. After the assassination, the common men, they were called plebes or plebeians, you might remember from middle school history. They were up in arms because Caesar had been popular and had instituted many social programs for them. So Brutus has to calm the crowd down. He has to explain to them why he took part in the conspiracy. And so he makes a speech. And after Brutus makes his speech, in comes the body of Caesar, and Mark Antony makes his speech. Now, I do a fair amount of workshops in middle schools, and a lot of 8th grade school systems have the students read Julius Caesar. So I say to them, these two pieces of rhetoric, these two speeches, if this were a debate, who wins the debate? Does Brutus win the debate, or does Antony win the debate? Or I say, if these were two lawyers delivering their closing remarks to judge and jury, whose argument is more cogent? So I'm going to do both pieces. They follow in quick succession, first Brutus and then Mark Antony. Romans, countrymen, lovers, hear me for my cause, and be silent that you may hear. Believe me for mine honor, and have respect to mine honor that you may believe. Censure me in your wisdom, and awake your senses that you may the better judge. If there be any in this assembly, any dear friend of Caesar's, to him I say Brutus's love to Caesar was no less than his. If then that friend demand why Brutus rose against Caesar, this is my answer. Not that I loved Caesar less, but that I loved Rome more. Had you rather Caesar were living, to die all slaves, than that Caesar were dead to live all free men? As Caesar loved me, I weep for him. As he was fortunate, I rejoice at it. As he was valiant, I honor him. But as he was ambitious, I slew him. There is tears for his love, joy for his fortune, honor for his valor, and death for his ambition. Who is here so base that would be a bondsman? If any answer for him have I offended. Who is here so rude that would not be a Roman? If any answer for him have I offended. Who is here so vile that would not love his country? If any answer for him have I offended. I pause for reply. Then none have I offended. I've done no more to Caesar than you shall do to Brutus. The question of his death is enrolled in the Capitol, his glory not extenuated wherein he was worthy, nor his offenses enforced for which he suffered death. Here comes his body, mourned by Mark Antony, who, though he had no part in his death, shall benefit from his dying, a place in the commonwealth, as which of you shall not? With this I depart, as I slew my best lover for the good of Rome. I shall reserve the same dagger for myself, when my country shall have need of my death. And Brutus unsheathes his dagger, and he walks out into the raucous crowd of plebeians, but he has mesmerized them, and he's completely quieted them down. So Brutus, feeling like he's done his job, he resheathes his dagger, and then he leaves, which is his big mistake, because he leaves the stage open for Mark Antony to make his address, one of the most famous speeches in all of Shakespeare. So the body is brought in, and Mark Antony says, "Friends, Romans, countrymen, lend me your ears. I come to bury Caesar, not to praise him. The evil that men do lives after them. The good is oft interred with their bones, so let it be with Caesar. The noble Brutus hath told you Caesar was ambitious. If it were so, it were a grievous fault. And grievously hath Caesar answered it, here under leave of Brutus and the rest. For Brutus is an honorable man. So are they all honorable men. Come I to bury Caesar. He was my friend, faithful and just to me. But Brutus says he was ambitious, and Brutus is an honorable man. He hath brought many captives home to Rome, whose ransoms did the general coffers fill. Did this in Caesar seem ambitious? When that the poor hath cried, Caesar hath wept. Ambition should be made of sterner stuff. Yet Brutus says he was ambitious. And Brutus is an honorable man. You all did see that on the Luper call. I thrice presented him a kingly crown, which he did thrice refuse. Was this ambition? Yet Brutus says he was ambitious, and sure, he is an honorable man. I speak not to disprove what Brutus spoke, but here I am to speak what I do know. You all did love him once, not without cause. What cause withholds you then to mourn for him? Oh, judgment! Thou art fled to brutish beasts, and men have lost their reason. Bear with me. My heart is with Caesar, and I must pause till it come back to me. But yesterday, the word of Caesar might have stood against the world. Now lies he there, and none so poor to do him reverence. O masters, if I were disposed to stir your hearts and minds to mutiny and rage, I should do Brutus wrong, and Cassius wrong, who you all know are honorable men. I shall not do them wrong. I rather choose to wrong the dead, to wrong myself and you, than I will wrong such honorable men. But there's parchment. 'Tis the will of Caesar. I found it in his closet. Let but the commons hear this testament, which, pardon me, I do not mean to read. And they would go and kiss dead Caesar's wounds, dip their napkins in his sacred blood. Yea, beg a hair of him from memory, and dying, mention it within their wills, bequeathing it as a rich legacy unto their issue. Remember Caesar. All right, in the historical play Henry IV, Part 1, Prince Hal realizes that he eventually is going to be King Henry V. He has to tone down his bad behavior. His bad behavior consists of drinking and gambling and what the Elizabethans referred to as wenching, or going to houses of ill repute. And his great character, friend in this wenching and debauching, is a character by the name of Sir John Falstaff. Now, eventually, Henry will renounce Falstaff in Henry IV, Part 2. But at this point, he's not quite ready to renounce him. They've been good friends. Falstaff is probably in his early to mid 40s. Now, Hal offers him a commission in the army. Falstaff doesn't really want the commission. He's not in very good shape, but he doesn't want to be away from Hal, so he accepts the commission. So it's the morning before a battle, a little skirmish, and Falstaff and Hal are talking, and Falstaff says, this is a paraphrase, but it's pretty much the essence of what the conversation was. Falstaff says, you know, Hal, all things considered, I wish the battle was won, the day is over, and most importantly, that I'm still alive. And Hal looks at him and says rather disdainfully, old man, you owe your country and your God a good death. And then Hal leaves the stage, leaving Falstaff by himself to soliloquize. He yells back concerning his death, "'Tis not due yet! I would be loath to pay him before his day. What need I be so forward with him that calls not on me? Well, 'tis no matter, honor pricks me on. Yea, but how if honor prick me off when I come on? How then? Can honor set to an arm? No. Or a leg? No. Or take away the grief of a wound? No. Honor hath no skill in surgery then? No. What is honor? A word. What is in that word, honor? What is that honor? Air, a trim reckoning. Who hath it? He that died of a Wednesday, doth he feel it? No. Doth he hear it? No. Is it insensible? And yea, to the dead. But will it not live among the living? No. Why? Detraction will not suffer it. Therefore, I'll none of it. Honor is a mere scutcheon. And so ends my catechism. All right, in the Shakespearean comedy As You Like It, Duke Senior gets usurped by his younger brother and is sent to the forest of Arden to live like Robin Hood of old. That's what the text says. Now, there's a lot of people running around the forest of Arden. One of them is a character called Jacques. He's referred to as the melancholy Jacques. He's kind of a philosopher, kind of a curmudgeon. Now, there's a fellow named Adam, an old man, who's been also pushed out from the court, and he's with a younger fellow, Orlando. Now, Orlando and Adam don't seem to have very good survival skills. They haven't eaten for a while. So they come upon Duke Senior and his men having a feast, a veritable feast. And Orlando pulls his sword, and he's ready to fight for the food if he has to because they're so hungry. And Duke Senior says, "Put your sword away. Come on, sit down, dine, sup with us. There's plenty of food." And he sits down, and Duke Senior looks out, and he says, "This wide and universal theater has more woeful pageants than your own." And picking up on that theme of the wide and universal theater, the philosophic, melancholic Jacques delivers perhaps the most famous speech in all of Shakespeare. He says, "All the world's a stage, and all the men and women merely players. They have their exits and their entrances. One man in his time plays many parts, his acts being 7 ages. At first the infant, mewling and puking in the nurse's arms, and then the whining schoolboy with satchel and shining morning face, creeping like snail unwillingly to school. And then the lover, sighing like furnace with a woeful ballad made to his mistress's eyebrow. And the soldier, full of strange oaths and bearded like the par, jealous and honest, sudden and quick in quarrel, seeking the bubble reputation even in the cannon's mouth. Then the justice, in fair round belly, with good capon lined, with eyes severe and beard of formal cut, full of wise saws and instances, and so he plays his part. The 6th age slips into the lean and slippered pantaloon with spectacles on nose and pouch on side, his youthful hose well saved, a world too wide for his shrunk shank, and his big manly voice turning again toward childish treble. Pipes and whistles in his sound. The last scene of all that ends this strange eventful history is set in childishness and mere oblivion. Sans teeth, sans taste, sans eyes, sans everything. Thank you. I played Jacques many years ago for the Lyric Stage in Boston, when they were above the French restaurant on Charles Street. Director, a fellow named Charles Boyle. And he said to me, "You know, Stephen, a lot of people refer to the character as the melancholy Jacques." And he said to me, "I want you to know I think you've got the melancholy part down just fine. But he said there's other aspects to this guy's personality, so the next time we rehearse in a couple nights, could you show me something else?" So I went back and looked at all the scenes with Jacques, and one of them is with Touchstone. Touchstone is the court jester, and he's also in the Forest of Arden with Duke Senior. Now, nobody gets the best of the melancholy Jacques in a verbal joust, but it seems that Touchstone does. So Touchstone leaves. And when Touchstone leaves, it seems as if Jacques wants to have a good laugh, but he can't allow himself to laugh because that's not who he is. But finally he erupts in laughter. He doesn't realize that Duke Senior and his men are there, so he has to sort of explain himself with this laughter. A fool! A fool! I met a fool in the forest. Motley fool, miserable world. As I do live by food, I met a fool who laid him down, basked him in the sun, and railed on Lady Fortune in good terms, in good set terms, and yet a motley fool. "Good morrow, fool," quoth I. "No, sir," quoth he, "call me not fool, till heaven hath sent me fortune. Then he drew a dial from his poke, and looking at it with lackluster eye, says very wisely, it is 10 o'clock. 'Tis but an hour ago since it was 9. And after 1 hour more, it will be 11. And so from hour to hour, we ripe and ripe, and then from hour to hour, we rot, and thereby hangs a dead. When I did hear the noble fool thus moral on time, my lungs began to crow like chanticleer, that fools should be so deep contemplative. And I did laugh sans intermission an hour by his dial. O noble fool, O worthy fool, oh that I were a fool. I am ambitious for a motley coat. Invest me in my motley. Give me leave to speak my mind, and I will through and through cleanse the foul body of the infected world, if they will patiently receive my medicine. So I want to tell you a funny little story. My son is now a sophomore in college. He's at Denison University in Ohio. But when he was in the 8th grade, I was performing this piece at a retirement community in Weston called Norumbega Point. And he didn't really want to be there, of course, he wanted to be with his friends. But, he had seen me perform my Walt Whitman show a number of times, but he'd never seen me perform Shakespeare. So we get back in the car and he says, Dad, he said, that speech, that's pretty funny. We write and write and write, and then we rot and rot and rot. So he takes the beat, he looks at me, and he says, so Dad, the way I figure it, you're in the first rot cycle. You're in the first rot cycle. Yeah, there you go. All right. I've seen a lot of productions of Hamlet, and I often feel that Polonius gets misplayed as a bumbling, stumbling fool. I don't think Polonius is a bumbling, stumbling fool at all. I think he's a very concerned father. His daughter Ophelia is in love with this guy that seemingly is losing his mind, named Hamlet. All right, he also cares a great deal about his son. Now his son Laertes is home from college on spring break. All right, spring break is over, and Laertes has to go back. Now Polonius sees he's not yet boarded the ship. He's procrastinating, he's dilly-dallying. So Polonius thinks, all right, I'll take this opportunity to give him a little moral lesson, if you will. Just the kind of lesson that most 22-year-olds don't want from their fathers. So Polonius says, yet here, Laertes, aboard for shame. The wind sits in the shoulder of your sails, and you're stayed for there. My blessing with thee, and these few precepts in thy memory look thou character. Give thy thoughts no tongue, nor any unproportioned thought his act. Be thou familiar, but by no means vulgar. Those friends thou hast and their adoption tried, grapple them to thy soul like hoops of steel. But do not dull thy palm with entertainment of each new-hatched, unfledged comrade. Beware of a quarrel, but once in it bear it, that the opposed may beware of thee. Give every man thy ear, but few thy voice. Take each man's censure, but reserve thy judgment. Costly thy habit, as thy purse can buy, but not expressed in fancy, rich, not gaudy. For the apparel oft proclaims the man. And they in France of the best rank and station are of a most select and generous chief in that. Neither a borrower nor a lender be, for loan oft loses both itself and friend, and borrowing dulls the edge of husbandry. This above all, to thine own self be true, and it must follow as the night the day. Thou canst not then be false to any man. Farewell, my blessing season this in thee. All right, so I want to thank you all very much for being here, and I want to conclude the program today with the final remarks of Puck, from Midsummer Night's Dream. Now, when I was in high school, I went to Cambridge High and Latin High School. That shows how old I am, because now it's called Cambridge Ringe and Latin High School. But that didn't happen until 1978. I graduated in 1970. I was the last class that had to study Latin. Cambridge High and Latin High School, then they dropped the Latin requirement. Anyway, I had a tremendous English teacher my senior year in high school, and I had a great theater director and teacher. I got involved with theater in high school because, believe it or not, I stuttered uncontrollably. I had a head injury when I was a young boy, pushed down a flight of stairs when I was like 5 years old, and I think that the head injury had something to do with the stuttering. And I also attended a Catholic grammar school, St. Peter's Grammar School, and I was scared to death of the nuns, so I don't think I ever wanted to raise my hand or try to answer a question. The 7th grade, the nun said to me, "Master Collins, you are a bold, impertinent individual, just like your father before you." She had taught my father. So anyway, in high school I played Demetrius, one of the lovers, and then later in life I played Oberon, the king of the fairies, several times. I always kind of wanted to play Puck, but 6'4" guys never get cast as Puck. You know, lots of times gymnasts and dancers, and a lot of times directors do, you know, cross-gender casting, and they cast, you know, gymnast women that really can move their bodies gracefully. But the thing about doing your own show is you can do whoever the hell you want to do. So at the end of the play, after the play within the play and the marriage ceremony of Hippolyta and Theseus, the final scene has Oberon talking to Puck. And then Oberon leaves and Puck is by himself. And most productions have him up on a cliff or a promontory of some sort. And the final words to the audience, I think he's asking you as an audience member, what is it you just took part in? Was it a dream? Was it reality? Was it perhaps a combination of both? So here are the closing lines to Midsummer Night's Dream. If we shadows have offended, think but this, and all is mended, that you have but slumbered here while these visions did appear, and this weak and idle theme, no more yielding but a dream. Gentles, do not reprehend. If you pardon, we will mend. And as I am an honest Puck, if we have unearned luck now to escape the serpent's tongue, we will make amends ere long, else the Puck a liar call. So, good night unto you all. Give me your hands, if we be friends, and Robin shall restore amends. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Terrific.
You're welcome. So as some of you know, she mentioned it, this is the 400th anniversary. Shakespeare was born on April 23rd, 1564, and he died on April 23rd, 1616. Now, most scholars believe that he was born on the 23rd, but there's no birth certificate. There's a baptismal record from April 25th. And back in those days, 80% of the children that were born in Stratford-upon-Avon and surrounding villages where Shakespeare was born, they were all baptized 2 days after their birth. So it's possible that Shakespeare was born on the 22nd, or maybe the 24th or the 20th, you know, but most scholars say the 23rd of April. And he died on the 23rd of April, 1616. He lived to be 52 years of age. He was a very successful businessman. He made a lot of money, a lot of money. He was not only an actor and a playwright, he was a shareholder in the Globe Theater. And so he was on the board of directors and a shareholder. And, you know, 10 years before he died, he was able to buy the biggest house in Stratford with the most amount of acreage. And so he was not some poet living in a garret eating bread crusts and drinking water. He was extraordinarily successful. And I love that what I did in the beginning, that's a compilation of quotes that was put together by a fellow from Columbia University, I believe, named Bernard Levin. And it's called Quoting Shakespeare. And if you wanted to get it yourself, all you have to do is Google Quoting Shakespeare and that will come up. So I want to thank you all very much. If there are any questions or comments.
Did he ever
Yes.
have children?
Yes, Shakespeare had children, yes. He had, his first child, her name was Susanna. Now he was married to a woman named Anne Hathaway. She was 8 years older than him. Some people believe that she was already pregnant and was in dire need to find a husband. They can't prove any of this, but that's what some people believe. So he had Susanna, and then he had twins 3 years later, and one of the twins, his name was Hamnet. Not Hamlet, but Hamnet. And Hamnet died. So he did have three children, one of them died. Any other questions? No? All right.
Thank you.
Well, thank you ever so much. I wish I could stay and hang out with you and have lunch, but I'm going to the Acton Council on Aging where I'm teaching a course on the poetry of Walt Whitman. So, I can hopefully see you again at some point.